Good morning. So this is just a little something extra, just if you're interested. It deals with our lesson yesterday morning from the book of Hosea, particularly just a little note that I think is interesting about the children of Hosea, and we talked about them a little bit yesterday. He has three children, and their names are Jezreel, Laruhamai, and Lo-Ami, and their names have certain meanings attached to them. And this is something that it would have been neat to get into, but it wasn't directly related to what we were talking about, and it would have taken a little bit more time, and people were ready for the lesson to end, and so this is just something in case you were interested in it. But if you remember Hosea chapter 1, he marries Gomer. She is given to prostitution, and she is clearly cheating on him, and he has these three children. One of them, Jezreel, whose names means that God sows. The children are going to be sown somewhere, probably in like a distant land, talking about Assyria coming in to take the children of Israel and scatter them among the nations. Then he has the second child, Laruhamah. Laruhamah means no compassion. And so whenever you see the word lo at the beginning of these names, Lo-Ami, that's no people or not my people. Laruhamah is no compassion, or God is not compassionate towards them anymore. It means basically God has been compassionate, but his compassion has run out. They have been adulterous for so long. They have cheated on God and broken the covenant so many times. He's about to lose compassion with them. And then finally, you have the child named Lo-Ami, which is not my people. Basically, God's going to see them just as all the other peoples. The special relationship that they have through covenant, through a marriage covenant to God, will be no more. So that's how the story begins, but it's not quite how it ends. If you look at the end of chapter 2, we finished the lesson by looking at this passage. In verse 23, it says, I sow her for myself in the land, or I will sow her. There's this future image of God sowing her in his land for himself. And so not being sowed among the nations, that's the name Jezreel, but God is going to sow her for himself in his land. And then the next phrase, and I will have compassion on her who had not obtained compassion. So no longer will you be Lo-Ruhamah, but now you're going to be Ruhamah. Now you're going to be the one who has compassion, and God will have compassion on them. And then he says in verse 23, and I will not say to those who are not my people, and I will say to those who are not my people, you are my people, and they will say, you are my God. So covenant restored, life with God restored. They are his people now, and he is their God. And it's this beautiful picture. And then I think when you read chapter 3 of Hosea, you get an image of that reconciliation taking place. All right, now the point that I wanted to make about this is this whole idea with these names of these children, and then God reversing the fortune of those names in some future day when he reconnects with his people, that's picked up on in the New Testament, particularly by Peter. So if you look at 1 Peter chapter 2, 1 Peter is written largely to answer the question, how do we as Christians live in the midst of a hostile environment? We live in a world, they were living in a world where Christianity was very foreign to the peoples around them. And there was a lot of skepticism and uncertainty about it. There was a lot of suspicion around Christianity. There were rumors that circulated. There were insults. There were insinuations of evil activities among Christians. I mean, when the emperor says the Christians are starting fires in Rome, and when you have all of these ideas about this unknown religious cult popping up, you just immediately meet them with suspicion, especially if you know nothing about them. It's not like these people knew Jesus or had read the New Testament or anything. They just heard rumors swirling about these dangerous people. And so if that's the society you're living in, what do you do to change the narrative and to solve some of the problems of those rumors? Well, that's what 1 Peter will help us understand. I think in our culture, as we perhaps move farther from a worldview that's very familiar and comfortable with Christianity to a worldview where Christianity is kind of seen as a fringe thing or is met with suspicion, 1 Peter becomes more and more relevant every day. But what I want you to notice is some of the language that's used to describe the church and the people of God in 1 Peter chapter 2. So if you look at verse 9, A lot of this language comes from Exodus chapter 19, when God first calls them out of Egypt and he's making this covenant with them. He says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of God's own possession." Those are the types of languages, that's the type of language that's used when God initiates his covenant with the children of Israel there at Mount Sinai. They're becoming his people, his special people. And it says that he does that so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Excellencies of God are proclaimed by the church because he loved us, he cared for us, he gave us this special vocation, and he called us out of darkness and into light. What does it look like in darkness? Well, it kind of looks like the first chapter of Hosea, when even though there's this covenant available, it's been rejected. And so they are not his people and there is no compassion. And what does it look like in light? Well, it kind of looks like the second chapter of Hosea, where there is compassion again. And God sows you in his field, and you are his people. Because notice verse 10. This is why we proclaim his excellencies. Because we've gone from the children of Hosea to the promise of something better. Verse 10 says, "For you were once not a people, but now you have become the people of God." Those are direct citations from the language used in the Septuagint of Hosea chapter 1 and chapter 2, where you are not a people, lo ami, but now you are the people of God. And then he says, you had not received mercy or compassion. That's a direct quotation from the Septuagint. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So from la ruhama to the one who has received mercy. And so Peter picks up on those names, and he picks up on how they're not his people. There is no compassion. But then you get to chapter 2, and God says, I will make you my people, and I will have compassion on you. And so Peter sees that as kind of our pre-Christian state to our becoming a Christian state. And when we do become his people, because he does have mercy and compassion on us, then we become this chosen race and a royal priesthood and a holy nation and the people of God's own possession. And our mission then becomes to proclaim the excellencies of him who called us out of this darkness and into this light. So if you know anyone in need of compassion, if you know anyone in need of mercy, if you know anyone in need of becoming an actual chosen, special, precious person of God, then this is a valuable message for them. And this is a valuable message for you and I as well. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that it's kind of interesting to me that 1 Peter picks up on that language and applies it to us as Christians, being the ones who now have received mercy or compassion and are the ones who are now the people of God. Anyway, have a wonderful Monday morning. God bless you.